What is your definition of the end of summer? Is it the end of August and the beginning of September? Or is it when the leaves start to fall? Whatever that may be, what are your plans for the end of the summer? Put in the comments below. So without further ado, let's grab a blanket, turn off your lights for 5 true scary ghost stories that happened, well, it happened now. Radios and game shows. I was living with my grandfather over the summer, and quite honestly, his house has always given me the creeps. There wasn't any real reason for it. It's small and actually pretty cute and rather comfortable. But every time I was there alone or at night, it fills me with absolute dread. I get paranoid and I just get really bad vibes, you know? Well, the first time I heard anything strange was one night this past summer. I woke up in my bed upstairs around 2 to 3 a.m. to the distinct sound of the Wheel of Fortune. The wheel spins, the person picks a letter, and ding, if they get it right. It wasn't too strange, because my grandfather often got up in the middle of the night to watch TV. And well, he's 83, so his hearing isn't the greatest, and when he watches it, it's blasting and I hear it very clearly upstairs. I eventually got back to sleep and asked him about it in the morning though. He slept the whole night, like a baby. I heard the sounds again about a week later as I was going to sleep, but as I said, at night, his house overwhelms me with fear, so there was no way I was going downstairs to check it out. But I didn't even ask my grandpa in the morning, because it creeped me out so much. A couple of days later, my sister stayed the night with me, and she brought her Nintendo DS and, of course, a Wheel of Fortune game. I didn't tell her about the sounds, but we played it together until her game died, and then eventually we went to bed. Again, right when I was about to fall asleep, I heard the purr of the wheel, the voices, the dings. I looked at my sister, and she seemed to be asleep in the other bed. I looked at the side table, and her DS was there, closed, still dead, no lights. I picked it up and took the game out, and the noises continued. When we woke up, my sister told me she thought she heard her game playing in the middle of the night, so at least I know it's not just me. Now the radio. I was getting ready to go to an anime convention with my boyfriend in the morning. We wanted to get there early, and it was a 3-hour drive, so he was going to pick me up around 4 a.m. My grandfather is a light sleeper, so I decided to pack all of my stuff and bring it downstairs so I could get ready without waking him up by running up and down the steps all morning. You have to go through his room to get upstairs, so I tried to sleep on the couch, but I was too excited for the con, so I just kinda lied there for a few hours. But my excitement started to turn into anxiety. I started to get an unnerved, paranoid feeling again. And then I heard a radio. It was very faint and muffled, but definitely a radio. There was like an announcer, static, and eventually a rather long song played, and I can still remember the drums. I couldn't place the song, and I couldn't make out any words that were said, but the drums really stuck out in my memory. Again, I felt like I was frozen to the couch. I was way too scared to see what it was, and it was coming from upstairs. My grandpa is a rather grumpy person, and he hates a lot of things, but he especially hates music. He doesn't own a radio or any kind of music system. The only television in the house was in the living room, and it was off. I just kept telling myself that it was my laptop or iPod upstairs, even though I know both were dead and in my suitcase right next to me. I moved out at the end of the summer when I got a job in my boyfriend's hometown. I visit him often though, when I have days off though. A couple weeks ago I came over after work and I was exhausted. We were in the living room, and my grandfather turned the TV off, and we both lied down on our separate couches to take a nap, and as soon as my head hit the couch I was comfortable. I heard the static and the voices. It was the middle of the day this time, and my grandpa was right next to me, so I decided to check it out. I got up and followed the sound to my grandpa's room, because like I said, it sounded like it was coming from upstairs, and you go through his room to get there. Well, as soon as I stepped into his room, everything stopped. Absolute silence. I stepped back, and as soon as my head was out of his room, the sounds came back. I kept poking my head in and out of his room before he asked me what I was doing, and so I told him I was hearing voices like on a radio. He told me that he had heard voices a couple days prior to this, and he said that there was a radio in the kitchen, but it hasn't been on since my grandma was alive, which was 13 years ago. I checked it out, but I highly doubt it was what I was hearing. It was shoved where no one could find it, covered in years of dust and spiderwebs, no fingerprints. I doubt it worked. Also, because I had moved out, it ruled out the possibility of electronics upstairs that time. There were only empty beds up there. But that concludes my story for now. If anyone can offer up explanations, it would be fantastic. It's just been on my mind a lot lately, and I'm curious if anyone else is haunted by game shows and ghost radios. My wife has been seeing dark figures. This has happened at night and light and recently during the day. If you guys have any thoughts, please tell me. So, the first time this happened was over 5 years ago. I was in bed, our kids not staying at home, and dogs in bed with me. She was walking from our kitchen on one far end of the house to our bedroom on the far other end. She saw a dark figure pass from our back door to our front door, which was out of her direct sight. She originally thought it to be me and asked the question. When she got in eyesight of the front door, nothing and no one was there. Since then, up until yesterday, she has seen something 3 times more. All of these times have been in the past 10 months. These are sightings. She is alone in the kitchen or attached garage each time. She is almost 40 years old, a general skeptic, but yet religious and faith-based in her beliefs. The other sightings are as follows. Last summer, 11:45 p.m. in kitchen, late at night getting drink from fridge. Fridge light is the only light. Myself and the kids were in bed awake. Turn from fridge to door that leads to garage. A dark male figure comes through closed garage door, straight towards her. She is paralyzed with fear, backs as far into fridge as possible. Figure turns and brushes her legs, walks back through the closed door. Late summer, 11 p.m. in garage. All overhead lights on, no windows. She is off to one side of the garage gathering a few things for her son's school. Myself and kids are in bedrooms. Male figure appears suddenly in front of overhead garage door in the center of the garage. Walks from overhead door through kitchen door. Wife says same looking as before. Male figure didn't look at bottom half, dark as shut off TV as she described it. Could not see through. Yesterday, 7:30. Kitchen. Daylight. Wife home with daughter in bedroom, and dog with daughter. My wife notices sun shining in through kitchen windows, and notices square of light shining on utility doors, adjacent to garage door. Wife notices something out of the corner of her eye as she bends over to check pizza in the oven. Looks over, notices what she describes as a very similar, this time a female figure stepping up out of the sunlight, shining on utility door. She remains calm and feels unthreatened. She says this is the first time she has actually looked and seen the lower portion and noticed legs. Figure, after stepping up and out, turns sideways and passes from her right to left into the kitchen, and quickly fades out. I'm not sure if this is relevant or not, but I thought I should add the following. The first sighting many years ago happened shortly after her dad passed away of natural causes. My dad has been battling pancreatic cancer before he died in August of last year. I know sighting 1 was before my dad's death, and 2 was after his death. Yesterday, my wife wasn't hesitant to tell me that she saw it again, and it was female, because my grandmother has been in the hospital for 2 weeks, although she appears to be on the mend. The time a ghost passed me a beer. This is all 100% true, guys. I say this because I know sometimes fiction might creep into Reddit paranormal. Play it over and over again in my head since it happened to me a couple years back. Told my mom about it the night it happened. I literally ran upstairs and burst into her room at 3 a.m. to tell her. But other than that, I've never told another person. So, I've been working weird hours for a few months. I think I was working 12 p.m. to 1 a.m. So by the time I made my way home from work, it was getting pretty late. Right off the bat, it was a weird night. One of my workmates dropped me off around the corner from where I live, as usual. And I start walking down the road to go to turn into my street. I'm greeted by 5 police officers and one of my neighbors, and I see my entire street is cordoned off with police tape. You can't enter this street. There's been a shooting. A man is critical in hospital, and we have forensic and ballistic teams combing the area. I don't think any of this shooting business is related to what happened next. I'm just filling you guys in on my night. So anyways, after 2 hours of smoking cigarettes with my neighbor and bitching about why we can't walk the 30 yards into our homes, the police finally wrap up their stuff and tell us we can go home, which was about time. It was closing in on 3 a.m. at this point. So anyways, I open the front door. My 2 dogs go crazy as usual, and once I calmed them down, I decided to have a can of ice-cold beer to take the edge off after a day's hard work. I tended to have 2 beers most nights after work to calm my mind. I work in a very noisy woodwork factory, and at the time, I used to smoke and regularly chug down cups of coffee to keep me alive during the shift, so I'd always be wide awake when I got home, even though it was bedtime. I cracked my beer open, and I put it down on the far end of the kitchen table as I start to turn the TV on that's mounted on the kitchen wall. Then I flip the lid up on my laptop at the other end of the kitchen table, and I finally sit down. 15 to 20 minutes passed while I browse the internet and flick TV channels, when I suddenly remember I opened a beer, which I completely forgot about. I said, "Shit," out loud, because I hate letting beers go warm. The very second I looked at the can of beer after remembering about it, an untouched full 1-pint can of beer, it started quickly sliding towards me, from one end of a 6-foot-long table to the other, and once it reaches me, it turned right and stopped directly next to my left hand and laptop. Think of a big L shape of movement. The beer slid about 5 foot down, and then 1 foot across until it touched the back of my left hand. I completely friggin' froze. Just sat staring at the beer in shock for about 15 seconds, with my heart pounding, until my brain registered what had actually happened. That's when I just bolted up the stairs and burst into my mom's room shouting, but it was like 3:30 a.m., and she was so tired and pissed off when I woke her up, and she basically didn't give a shit, which is understandable. I did burst into the room like a maniac and scare the hell out of her. Obviously, I checked the table and for any other plausible explanation, but it's impossible. The beer shot towards me and across to my hand in a way that you could only describe as somebody forcefully dragging it across the table. Makes me freak out a little every time I think about it, because I still live in the same house, and I can vividly replay it in my mind all the time like a video recording. The can, shooting towards me. The voice, "Turn on the lights, I'm up here," coming from the attic. I have a weird story to tell. I promise you, 1,000,000 times every part of it is true. This happened around 10 years ago. It was at night. Me and my older sister were at the second floor spending the evening with our oldest brother and his wife. I can't recall what we were chatting with them exactly, but anyways, after a while, at around 10 p.m., me and my sister decided that it's time to go to sleep, so we were heading downstairs. Now you see, my brother got a switch right next to his main front door, into the stairs, that controls the light of the attic, where the stairs come to an end. We just put useless stuff there. It's a very small room. and then the rest is just the flat, empty roof. So, as we were heading down, we noticed that the light was on in the attic. So I switched it off, and then both me and my sister heard the exact voice of my mom saying, "Turn on the light, I'm up here." Now, we were both certain that it was the sound of our mom, and that it was coming from upstairs, so we didn't say anything, and I turned it back on, and we headed downstairs. It is there when we both got shocked. As we opened the door, we found my mom drinking tea with my other brother with the TV on. We froze right there, unable to move or speak. My mom noticed that clearly something strange was going on, so she asked us what's wrong. After a moment of silence, we explained what happened. She didn't say anything and told us to go to sleep. But of course, I couldn't. I kept thinking about what happened the whole night. So who made that sound? And how did it do it? I mean, amongst all voices, the one of my mom is the one that I knew the best as I grew up with. So how did it mimic it? Was it to fool me and my sister? To this day, whenever I ask my sister if she remembers what happened, she says yes, and then suddenly changes the subject. Keep in mind that almost every night, I climb to the top of the attic to smoke and just chill there, and I've never stumbled into anything weird. Well, not for now. My first and only time babysitting in a haunted house. Okay, I know this is probably the most cliche horror movie plot sounding thing in the world, but bear with me here, because it's real. For reference, this happened 2 years ago, back in 2013. There's this family I babysit for. They go to church with my folks, and are truly the nicest people I've ever met. They're devout Christians, non-denominational, and they don't believe in ghosts or spirits or even demons, really. Just for your information. They also live in the boondocks of suburban Georgia. I mean, they're not too far away from civilization. Maybe 5 minutes to the nearest 7-Eleven, but they're far enough removed from society that you can't see their house from the nearest paved road. The dad's a contractor. He bought the land and built the place himself. And it's actually really nice. But it is in the middle of the goddamn forest, which makes the place creepy from the get-go, but I digress. The house itself is a one-story ranch style. The front door opens into the living area. The bedrooms are off down a hall to your left. The kitchen and dining area is to your right. And beyond that, the garage. The first and only time I stepped foot in the place was August 2013. Now, we live in Georgia, so it feels like Satan's armpit outside. But the house itself is freezing, not AC cold either. It's that unnerving, bone-chilly kind of cold that no amount of blankets can rectify. I actually checked the thermostat a few times during my stay, and it was set on 76. My teeth shouldn't have been chattering. Something else that's weird, and I felt like it ought to be mentioned before we get started proper. It's dark in this house. Even with every light on, it's hard to see into the next room. And that's in broad daylight. At night, it's even worse. I never really understood how they live there. I'm not one for sunny days, but I do like to see where I'm going. Anyways, so the parents leave for wherever they were headed, and the kids, a boy about 6 and a girl 3, are fed, washed, and in bed by 8:30. Now I'm left to my own devices, and I end up channel surfing. For a while, maybe an hour. Everything's hunky-dory, and then I hear the garage door open. A minute later, I hear the back door, the door that leads from the kitchen into the garage, open and shut. The footsteps wandering around the kitchen. The kitchen's floor made of stonework, so it has a pretty distinct sound when it's trod upon, especially by dress shoes. My first thought, oh, they're home early, fantastic. So I turn the TV off, straighten up the couch where I've been lounging, and prepare to greet them. But I look down the hallway and it's dark. All the lights are off on that end of the house. Now, if you look down the hallway, you can see into the kitchen, but you're looking directly at the door that leads to the garage. There's nobody there. Nobody opened the garage door. Nobody's in the kitchen. Nobody's just made a hell of a lot of noise that I cannot explain. So I'm freaked, but I do the thing everybody does. I go check it out to make sure. Only, I flip on light switches like a mofo, because I've seen enough horror movies to know wandering around in pitch darkness is not good. Nada. Door still locked. Garage hasn't budged. Now, I know I heard what I heard. I'm pretty sure it wasn't something in the show I was watching. I legit thought the parents were home. Whatever. I shake it off and settle back down again. Maybe my mind's playing tricks on me. Isn't that what everybody says the first time something weird happens? Another 15 minutes go by, and I'm engrossed in one of the Harry Potter movies, when during a lull in the movie, I hear it again. Garage door. Back door opening and shutting. Footsteps in the kitchen. Only this time it's accompanied by voices. So I mute Harry and look over back of the couch, fully expecting to see Ma and Pa strolling into the living room. Of course, there's nothing there. After maybe a minute, the voices disappear. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but there was definitely at least two, and one of them was definitely male. Once again, I get up and go look at the kitchen, flicking on lights as I go. This time, I'm greeted by something new. The refrigerator's door standing wide open. They have one of those fancy stainless steel gizmos, and the thing's swinging back and forth like a leaf in the wind. Now this is Haunting 101, right? Every ghost learns to stomp around noisily and opens door on their first day, but this thing has a child-proof locking mechanism on it. Great, so now ghosts can not only open doors, they can solve complex tasks to accomplish the feat? I check the fridge and wander back down the hallway again, but I don't get into the living area good before it sounds like all hell's broken loose in the kitchen. It's kinda hard to describe the loudness of the noise. It was as if every piece of china these people owned had been taken out of the cupboards and hurled to the ground simultaneously, ceramic shattering against stone. Great, now I'm in trouble. Casper's gone and destroyed the flatware, and I'm gonna be blamed for it. I run back down the hallway, but the kitchen's all in order, not even the remotest sign of damage. The noise wakes up the kids, and they come out of their rooms rubbing their eyes, asking me what happened. My skin's crawling, but I don't want to upset them. So I lie and tell them I'm sorry, it was something on TV, that the noise got a little louder than I expected. The boy buys the fib. He toddles off back to bed like a good little soldier, but the girl isn't so convinced. In fact, she looks directly past me down the hallway to the kitchen, as if she knows exactly what it was that woke her up. She sees that I've muted the Chamber of Secrets, and asks if she can stay with me for a while, just until she feels like she can go back to sleep again. I'm freaked out enough at this point to agree. Having a 3-year-old to company is better than none at all, right? So together we settle back onto the couch. She ends up curling up right next to me and nodding off in a matter of minutes. For a while, things are peaceful. The movie ends and I'm sitting there watching the credits scroll and listening to the theme music, when for no apparent reason, the fireplace next to the TV burst into flames. Reminder, these people live in the woods. They don't have any newfangled fancy pants gas fireplace you'd expect to see in a house in a subdivision. They actually use wood and kindling actual matches, so while there's always the possibility that they lit a fire and just didn't put it all the way out, just remember, we're in Georgia in August. Nobody in their right mind burns a fire in the dog days of summer in the South. It just doesn't happen. But here I am, standing at a roaring cozy looking fire. About that time I hear the garage door open. Oh, for friggin' sakes. This time it's actually the parents. They come trepising in, jangling keys and dropping their stuff on the counter, turns on lights and calling out for me. The dad makes his way into the living room first and notices the fire. Hey, if you were cold, you could have just adjusted the thermostat, he says, curious but not upset that I have apparently decided to set up camp in his living room. I tell him I didn't start it, that it all started on its own. He just kind of looks at me funny and mentions that they haven't used the fireplace since the winter before, so there shouldn't be any reason for it to be lit, which I already knew. but ultimately just sort of brushed it off. Whatever. He's obviously got bigger balls than I do if that didn't freak him out. The mother comes in and picks up the little girl to take her back to her bed. She's still half asleep, but I can hear her tell her mother that the old man lit the fire again. Now, I know she's half asleep and could very well have been dream talking, but I somehow doubt that. And I can guarantee you that there was no old man in that house with me that night. I don't stick around to answer any questions about why the girl was out of bed or who the old man was she was talking about. The man pays me for my time, and I dip out as quickly as I can and still be polite about it. I never went back there to babysit the kids, and just 4 months after my experience, they moved out of the house the father had built from the ground up. They said it was something to do with his business, taking him into another town. Funny thing is, though, they sold it to another couple in the church, who also moved out within 3 months of moving in. They wouldn't talk about why, just made vague excuses when my parents asked about it. I don't know who lives there now, if anyone.